All right, so you often hear me cite how bad and dangerous and how I guess draining single motherhood is on society. So I wanted to make a video kind of talking about showing the stats and going over it because again, I always like to provide evidence when I make claims. And I can always shoot people towards this video whenever they go towards it. So you can see this graph right here starting kind of just to kick things off, just to get a sense of things. Now, this is children under 18 living with their mother only, and they show stats going back to about 1967, that would be roughly. Um, and actually 1960, but the graph starts here at about 1967, 68. So you can see that in then just under 50% of kids um, or sorry, just under 50% was separated. But the key one here is never married. I think never married people, single moms with kids, was about, I don't know, 6%. Now it's about whatever, 48, 49. So that number has gone through the roof. People that are having kids that were never married. And I think that's one of the I'm not a big, religious, don't, do things before you're married kind of person. But I think anyone with critical thinking skills needs to acknowledge that you definitely should be married in an ideal world before you have kids. And I think a lot of the poverty that stems from certain places in society, it comes from that. But you'll see separated is down. It was just about 45. Now it's about 20. um, Divorce is actually pretty steady. It was just below 20. Now it's at about 30. Widowed, again, has gone down, I think, largely because that was right around the Vietnam War. So I'm guessing a lot of it. I think this is an American study, so it's again American Canadian stuff's going to line up pretty good. But I wouldn't worry too much about widowed because that's very rare nowadays. Um, but again, that just gets you a sense of that kind of stuff. Going to the next chart, you often hear sexual abuse. And this is another thing to bring up too. The one thing I wanted to bring up is that you always hear in society, about kids getting sexually abused, and it's always brought up how bad, the big sexual abuse scandal of the church, of the Catholic Church, and how bad it is. And I understand, yeah, but you're significantly more likely to be sexually abused by a live-in boyfriend or a stepdad. You're much more likely to be abused. And the fact that we're not talking about that more in society is kind of astounding to me. Now, the reason we're not doing it is, like I say, single moms or, remarried or, that single moms, basically, to put it as bluntly as we can, are much more likely to vote for the left, even compared to the average person. You're looking at probably 80 to 90% of single moms are voting for the left, and because they vote for the left, you can never criticize them, which is why the left, even though they disagree with them on most things, the left never criticizes Islam because, well, they vote for the left. So it doesn't matter how, the fact that their views on gay marriage is way worse than the average Christian or the average conservative. They're much more patriarchal, all this kind of stuff. They don't criticize them whatsoever, but again, because they vote for the left. Um, so anyway, you look at, married biological, again, by far the least likely to be sexually abused. By far the least likely. You're looking at maybe 1%. Next most likely is unmarried, um, single parent, no partner. So again, if you're going to be a single parent, you should wait till your kids get older to remarry or to get a boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever. Um, Neither parent, again, you're going up again. Um, Other married parents, again, the most likely by far, again, you're looking at probably 10 times more likely to be sexually abused if it's a single parent with partner, either boyfriend, step parent. And again, that's the majority of the situations. And again, if we want to prevent against sexual abuse, which is definitely something we want to do, it's a massive issue in society, abuse in general, but sexual abuse falls into that. We need to talk about this kind of stuff. So next thing here is physical abuse. Again, married biological, by far the least likely. You're looking at about, I don't know, 2-3%. Unmarried, you jump up to about 7-8%. Single parent, no partner, about 5. So again, single parent, no partner is still relatively unlikely, but still significantly more likely than married biological. Again, two-parent married households by far the most likely. Now, you never hear the left bring this kind of stuff up, and I really need to call them out with this kind of stuff because, again, they claim to care so much about the poor and the kids and all this kind of stuff. If you care about that, you would be preaching family values. Now, maybe not preaching as in how a religious person would, but you would bring it up to people when they say, hey, I'm poor, I was abused, all this kind of stuff. The best thing you can tell these people is to prevent it for future generations is to get married before you have kids and to stay married and to pick your partners wisely. Now, the problem with that is that we live in a society where there's no incentive to pick a partner wisely because if you're a woman, especially, well, guess what? If you pick a terrible guy to have kids with, we'll give you unlimited welfare, basically. We'll give you the equivalent of a $50,000 a year job to be if you're a single mom with two kids. Some of these states, um, you look at being a single. I think the majority of states I've seen a study now, but there's some states, the majority of states, you're better off to be on welfare if you're a single parent than you are to work a minimum wage job. And in some states, the Californias of the world, you can, if you have a single mom with two or more kids, you're looking at 50, 60 grand a year in benefits when you add it all up. So again, why would you work? And when you see that as a kid, you see that, hey, look, my mom's doing, all right, and she's never worked. So guess what? Those kids are going to be much more likely to be deadbeats too. And the cycle continues. And the fact that the left isn't calling this or talking about this shows one of two things. Either they're completely ignorant and have no idea whatsoever what they're talking about, which is some of them, or they are aware, which I think that most of the politicians are, but they care more about power. They care more about their own well-being, and like I say, the reason why they don't preach that too is that kids who grow up in more stable families, well, guess what? They're less likely to vote left. Kids who grow up with single moms, just scraping by, or maybe they're on welfare. But again, you don't get that much on welfare in most areas. Like I said, they're going to be much more likely to vote left. So that's why they don't talk about it. It's very simple. And again, people say, oh, you think politicians are really that petty, really that, selfish? Well, yeah, they clearly are, because if they weren't, they'd be talking about this kind of stuff. Um, the last one here, emotional abuse. Again, married biological, by far the least likely. Unmarried, again, those would be, I guess, adoptive parents. You look at even adoptive parents is still not that great. Again, married biological, by far the best. By far the best. It's not even close. Single parent, no partner, next most likely. Neither parent, next most likely. Other married parent, and then again, single parent with partner, again, by far the most likely for all of these categories, all of the categories, some of them by quite a bit. Again, physical abuse, again, it's that any man who goes for a single mom in most cases, because I think there's definitely exceptions to this rule. I've seen exceptions to this rule, but most of the time single mothers' sexual market value is deflated by default, right? Because most self-respecting men don't want to pay to raise another man's kids. Again, that's kind of, demoralizing. It makes you look bad, you know, all that kind of stuff. So generally, single mom's sexual market value is going to be deflated by default, which is why you see some of these, very attractive single moms that are dating kind of dirtbag guys. Well, because their sexual market value is deflated. If she wasn't a single mom, yeah, she could get a pretty good quality guy, but because she's a single mom, she can't. Um, and again, obviously, there's exceptions to this rule. I know there's exceptions, but we don't talk about exceptions when it comes to this kind of stuff. Exceptions don't matter. They do matter, but not nearly as much as a lot of people would have you think. But again, to sum it up, I wanted to bring this up because this is stuff that should be talked about a lot more. I understand why it isn't, but it's crazy that it isn't, and it should be definitely be talked about more. So anyway, I'm going to leave it there. If you like the video, make sure to hit that like and subscribe. I do have my PayPal linked in the description. I do have an email address, free transfer. I appreciate any donations, but at the very least, just hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already.